Well, hello there. I got to thinking about my ex-wife and how I met her. Well, I met her in Spokane, Washington. I was working as a mechanic up there, and she was a waitress in a Denny's diner. And in those days, she made pretty good money as a waitress, because she was a good waitress. She believed in working. Now, tipping. That got me to thinking about this whole thing about tips, because I was reading where all these, now these companies put a tip, actual tip, $2, $3, $5. I don't know what they put, but they put it right on the bill. Now, the practice of tipping is a matter of liberty, and it is a meritorious type award. So this goes, and this shows, what I got thinking was how criminalized this whole socialist government deal is that we got in the United States of America. United States of America. That song says, land of the free and home of the brave. Well, that's exactly what it was. But it's not anymore. For some reason, back there in Ronald Reagan's time, he says, take down this wall. And wall in Germany, between the East and the West in Berlin and the country, it went down. It fell down. Now, the Soviet Union dissolved. The different parts that were part of the Soviet Union left Russia and became independent and sovereign, as they say. Except they went into the tyranny of the United Nations, of NATO, of all these other things. And the United States, with that vacuum that was left, with the decline of the Soviet Union and dispersal of the countries, the United States of America slipped into this tyrannical essence of socialism and took over the position that the Soviet Union had enjoyed, and the United States of America actually became, let's put it in modern terms, the Soviet Union of the United States. The Soviet Union number 2. It did. They're out there telling everybody, make the country safe, make the world safe for democracy. Well, the United States don't have democracy. The United States has a one-party ruler. And it's no different than that old Soviet deal over there where they had the premier and they had the group of men that was gathered together and ruled the country. ruled the Union of Soviet satellites. Well, we got the same thing. We got a premier. They call him a president, but he's the same as the premier now. And he has aspirations of being the king. And there's a group of men back there. Let's see, there's currently, I think, 535 that are this body back there that makes they make a big show out of making a lot. Well, the House passes this, and the Senate does this, and the Senate comes up with this, and the House passes that, and everything, and the Premier signs it into law. Well, if that doesn't work fast enough, the Premier has this power of the pen where he signs things into law. Okay, now, let's go back. One of the things that they signed into law was this tip thing under the IRS. Companies like these these restaurants and these diners and these big fancy places and, well, let's say the bellboys in hotels and all the different workers have to collect tips. If there's 10 waiters in a restaurant and they get tipped, they put the money together, and then at the end of well, we've got $200 here, so there's $20 for each one of you in this envelope, which is a lie and a thief and anything else bad. Because my ex-wife, when she worked in that diner, she went around. She'd go out and when people come in and sat down in her station, she'd had the coffee pot in her hand. She'd go around, she'd put coffee in a couple, 3, 4 cups on her way to that new table. And then she'd say, "What can I get for you tonight?" And they'd say, such and such, such and such. Well, you need a minute to do, and this and that and the other. And she'd get water and everything, put the coffee pot back, get water, bring them coffee if they wanted it. And then she'd get the water out there, and she'd get her tablet out, and she'd write down. Well, she'd take the orders and put them up for the fry cook. Fry cook would come up, and she'd get her orders. Ding, ding, her orders was up. She'd take them out the table. Well, other people would come in and sit in other stations, and it didn't work quite that way. See? Because a tip was for service above the normal expected thing. Okay? There were some waitresses make $5 in tips in a night. Other waitresses make 20, 25. That ex-wife of mine, she could make sometimes 80, 90. I remember seeing her make as much as $100 in one night in tips. Because she was on the ball. And she tipped the busboy. That was the one that come around and cleaned off the tables and got it all ready for new setups. She tipped the fry cook. She shared what she got with them. And they paid. They did the work. They hurried and got her stuff for her because she shared hers. That was the way tips worked. But then, when they split tips, that's about the time she got out of waitressing. But when they split tips, those waiters that made $5, those that made $25, she had to put her $100 or her $80 or $70 in the pot. And they got part of hers. And that restaurant didn't have to pay the minimum wage. They could deduct X amount and only pay a percentage. If the minimum wage, say, was $2 an hour, they only had to pay something like 75 cents an hour, or 80 cents, or $1.25. I don't know what it was. But they only had to pay that because they made tips. And they could figure the tips into what the wage was. That wasn't right. If the minimum wage was $2.50, everybody should have got paid $2.50. Then their tips on top of it, and it was none of the business of the government. But they weren't getting their income taxes. The IRS wasn't getting that number of tips. Why? My wife happened to be honest, and she happened to write down what she made and added it to her income tax. But the government, they thought, oh no, we gotta get this money from everybody. That's when they made the tips part of what the wage was. That's why the companies now collect the tips. That's why it's gone away, this whole idea of tipping, because that was for service above and beyond, and a good worker that made good service to the people that went and did whatever that was. The hotels in Las Vegas and the big cities, the bell captain, he'd hire people. He got their paycheck. They got their tips. That was the deal. The waiter, the head waiter in the big fancy restaurants, he hired people. They got their tips. He got their paycheck. See, that's the way it worked. And it worked fine, and they had the best waiters and the best waitresses and everything in the business. They had the best bellhops in the business, because the ones that did the work did it right, was right there and did right up and everything, got the big tips, and the others didn't get the tips. And it weeded out the ones that didn't want to work. That's the problem with this country. The scriptures in the Bible says, by the sweat of thy brow all thy days thou shalt earn thy bread. Well, that goes along with the idea of charity. People that have trouble, that can't work, or that go, it's supposed to be a charitable thing from the others around them, not from the government, not from the king, not from the Soviet Union, dot to anything. Supposed to be for earning what we need individually, and for having charity for others individually, not the government, not that den of thieves, not those party mobs. Got it? Well, I went too long today, but I really got bothered by that. Well, think about it. Go read. Go study. Find out what liberty is and start demanding it. There's no divine right of kings. Nobody is given the right by God to be the boss of anybody else. Got it? Well, have a good day, and may God bless y'all.